In 1956, the McDonald's Corporation was a franchising operation with a serious problem. It was successful and broke at the same time. Ray Kroc, the 54-year-old milkshake machine salesman who had talked the McDonald brothers of San Bernardino into letting him franchise their miraculous little hamburger system nationwide, had signed a contract that was strangling him. His cut was 19% of each franchisee's sales, and of that sliver, a quarter went straight back to the brothers. After expenses, the company that would one day be worth more than most country stock markets was clearing almost nothing. Kroc was drawing no salary and borrowing against his life insurance to pay staff. The man who solved this was not Kroc, and he did not solve it with food. Harry Sonneborn was a former finance vice president at a clothing company, and he came to Kroc with an idea that had nothing to do with hamburgers, milkshakes, or golden arches. The company should get into land. Specifically, it should lease or buy the plot under every new restaurant itself, and then sublease it to the franchisee at a markup, with a minimum monthly rent or a percentage of sales, whichever was higher. Years later, speaking to a group of investors, Sonneborn put the result into a single sentence that Kroc reportedly hated and never stopped being enriched by. "We are not, technically, in the food business. We are in the real estate business. The only reason we sell 15-cent hamburgers is that they are the greatest producer of revenue from which our tenants can pay us rent." That sentence is the actual McDonald's. This is the story of the most successful company ever built on the difference between what a business appears to sell and what it actually owns. To see why the real estate idea was so powerful, you have to see the trap it escaped, because 1950s franchising was a famously bad business to be the franchisor in. The model of the day was simple and self-defeating. Sell a territory for a fat one-time fee, hand over the manual, and move on. The franchisor got a burst of cash and then almost nothing, while the franchisee, owning his territory outright, had no ongoing reason to listen to anyone. Chains of the era rotted from exactly this. No recurring revenue at the center, no control at the edges, quality collapsing outlet by outlet. Kroc had refused the fat fee model on principle. He charged a famously modest franchise fee and took his thin percentage, because he wanted operators invested in selling hamburgers rather than in having bought a license, which was excellent for quality and nearly fatal for the company. Sonneborn's structure solved every problem in the model at once. The Franchise Realty Corporation, formed in 1956, would find the site, control the lease, and stand between the landowner and the operator. Rent gave the company recurring income that grew with sales. The lease gave it control no contract clause could match. An operator who let standards slip was not merely in breach of a franchise agreement. He was a tenant who could lose his lease, his location, and his livelihood. And the property itself, bought at 1950s and 60s prices along the arterial roads of an America moving to the suburbs by the millions, became a compounding asset that had nothing to do with how many burgers moved in any given quarter. Hamburgers were the engine. Land was the machine the engine was bolted into. The mechanics of how a broke company bought half of roadside America deserve a paragraph, because it was done with almost no money down, a bootstrap that business schools still teach. Franchise Realty would find a landowner on a promising suburban corner and persuade him to build a McDonald's to the company's specification, or lease the bare ground on the strength of the covenant, often with Kroc and Sonneborn's personal guarantees in the early years, because the company itself had nothing. The franchisee's security deposit helped fund the site's development. The company then subleased to the franchisee at cost plus a markup that started around 40% and settled into the famous formula: a base rent covering the company's own lease payments with profit on top, or a percentage of the restaurant's sales, whichever was greater. Read that formula again, because it is quietly brilliant in both directions. In good times, the company's rent rose with every burger sold, and in bad times, the minimum held. The downside belonged to the operator, the upside was shared, and the land under it all belonged, increasingly, to McDonald's. As sales per store climbed through the 60s, the percentage clause kicked in almost everywhere, and rent became a river. When the company went public in 1965, it was this structure, not the food margins, that the prospectus was really selling. By the time of Sonneborn's death, decades later, McDonald's was one of the largest owners of retail real estate on the planet, and the standard analyst's line had become a cliché because it was true. The company is a property empire that happens to have a hamburger logo on its buildings. The land machine also paid for the most consequential check in fast food history, and the deal deserves telling because it contains the whole logic of the company in one transaction. By 1961, Kroc could no longer bear sharing control with the McDonald brothers, whose contract gave them veto over changes to their system and a permanent slice of his revenue, and he asked their price. They wanted $2.7 million, $1 million each after tax, plus the taxman's share, a staggering sum for a company still scraping for cash. And Sonneborn's realty covenant is what made the financing possible. A syndicate of institutional lenders advanced the money against the strength of the rent stream, under a repayment formula so convoluted, it took years longer than planned and cost multiples of the principal. What the price did not include has become American business folklore. The brothers asked to keep their original San Bernardino restaurant, and by Kroc's own account and theirs, asked for a royalty of 0.5% of the chain's revenues in perpetuity. Agreed, they said, on a handshake because putting it in the contract would have complicated the financing. It was never paid. Kroc, for his part, denied any such promise existed. The brothers' families maintained it did until the end. Run the arithmetic on today's system-wide sales, and the phantom 0.5% comes to hundreds of millions of dollars a year, the most expensive handshake ever not honored if it happened. As for the brothers' one-kept restaurant, the sale terms obliged them to stop using their own name on it, so they renamed it the Big M, and Kroc opened a brand new McDonald's a block away, which did to their trade exactly what you would expect. The men who invented the system ended with $1 million each, and a hamburger stand that could not carry their name, across the street from their own invention. Ownership, once again, had beaten authorship, inside the company as thoroughly as underneath its restaurants. The numbers then and now make the sentence literal rather than cute. Today, McDonald's owns or controls the land and buildings at the large majority of its tens of thousands of locations, and its annual reports tell the story in two adjacent lines. The company collects billions of dollars a year in rent from franchisees of the order of $10 billion, roughly a third of its entire revenue. And that rent carries margins that no kitchen on earth can approach. The revenue from company-operated restaurants, the actual selling of food by McDonald's itself, is the minority of the business and shrinking by design, as the company has refranchised outlet after outlet to get to a model where roughly 19 in every 20 restaurants are run by someone else who pays rent and royalties to the center. A franchisee, for their part, typically pays the famous service fee of a few percent for the brand and the system, and then rent, which is usually 2 or 3 times larger and is the real relationship. None of this is hidden. It is simply unlooked at because the arches, the advertising, and the happy meals occupy the eye. The kitchen is a tenant qualification system. Its purpose, exactly as Sonneborn said, is to generate a reliable stream of sales from which the rent can be paid. At 50,000 corners, the company chose because the corner itself would be worth owning whatever was built on it. The coda belongs to the two men, because the company's soul was genuinely split between them, and the split explains everything since. Kroc was a salesman evangelist who believed with complete sincerity that he was in the hamburger business. QSC, quality, service, cleanliness, the gospel he preached until he died. And he loathed Sonneborn's dictum precisely because it was true in a way his own story wasn't. Sonneborn was a money man who reportedly did not much care what the restaurant sold. He built the realty machine, served as the company's first president and chief executive, steered it to its 1965 flotation. And then, after a strategy clash with Kroc during the 1967 credit squeeze, when Sonneborn wanted to stop building and Kroc wanted to floor the accelerator, he resigned, sold his stock, and was airbrushed so thoroughly from the corporate legend that the founder's autobiography and the company museum barely mentioned the man who invented the actual business. Kroc's expansionism won the argument and Sonneborn's machine paid for it, the correct summary of the entire company. The stock Sonneborn sold on his way out would today be worth billions. His consolation was that he had already understood before almost anyone the general law his creation demonstrated. Look at what a great business collects, not what it sells. Railways collected land grants, banks collect deposits, platforms collect commissions, and the world's most famous restaurant company collects rent. The hamburger, it turns out, was never the product. The hamburger was the tenant's way of making rent, 15 cents at a time.